It was known as the Civilization Nouveau Riche Syndrome. When Zoari Prime finally achieved the status of a Category 1 civilization, its leaders decided it was time to take their place at the adults' table and finally join a space war. But when Ambassador Soanil announced their plan to declare war on a non-member of the Council, a planet called Earth, the room fell into utter silence. Some species trembled at the mere mention of the name. Soanil had no idea what he had just done. The Grand Council chamber stretched upward like a cathedral of stars, its pure black walls absorbing nearly all the light from 1,000 decorative lights embedded in the vaulted ceiling. 10 atmospheric sealed alcoves ring the chamber, each raised 20 meters above the central platform where Soanil stood. Behind their glass walls, the elder species of the Galactic Council sat in judgment, or at least they had been sitting. Now, several had risen from their seats, their various appendages pressed against the transparent barriers as if trying to escape. The Vorthan representative in Alcove 3 had turned from its usual emerald hue to a sickly yellow, its tentacles writhing in what Soanil recognized as extreme distress. In Alcove 7, the crystalline Sephori had begun vibrating at a frequency that made the glass sing a high keening note. The Milani pair in Alcove 9 clutched each other with all 6 arms, their feathered bodies trembling. Even the ancient Korvax in Alcove 1, a being so old it claimed to remember the birth of its own home star, had recoiled, its gelatinous form rippling with waves of apparent shock. Soanil stared up at each of them with his large pink eyes, the nictitating membranes flickering rapidly across their surfaces in an involuntary display of confusion. His gray skin, which had gleamed with a healthy sheen when he had entered the chamber, now faded to an ashen white that made the ceremonial blue markings on his arms look garish by comparison. The typical bipedal form of his species, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso evolved for both climbing and running, suddenly felt inadequate, too small for this vast space and the weight of the reaction he had provoked. His knees, joints that had carried him proudly through the great doors just minutes ago, now felt as if they might buckle. The surge of power he had experienced when stepping onto the speaker's platform as the representative of Zoari Prime's first Type 1 civilization drained away like water through a sieve. Had all those exaggerated reactions occurred just because he mentioned a war with Earth? His crossed arms, a posture he had adopted to project strength and determination, unfolded awkwardly, hanging at his sides like dead things, his 4-fingered hands opened and closed reflexively, a childhood gesture of uncertainty he thought he had outgrown decades ago. I don't understand, Soanil managed, his voice barely carrying to the translation notes embedded in each alcove. Earth is not a council member. They have no protection under the charter. Our analysis shows that species barely achieve Type 1 civilization status on their home planet, and their space presence is unremarkable outside their home system. Why do you... A deep, resonant voice cut through his stammering. President Stroff of the Xenorix had recovered his composure, though his purple skin still showed patches of darker violet that betrayed his lingering unease. His tail, so impossibly long that he wore it wrapped around his shoulders like a living scarf, tightened its coils as he leaned forward in his alcove. The movement was deliberate, calculated to draw attention, and it worked. All eyes, compound, simple, and various other sensory organs, turned to Soanil. Young Soanil, Stroff began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Sit down before you fall down.
What I'm about to tell you may save your species from extinction.
The president paused, letting his words sink in. He stood from his chair, his impressive 3-meter height requiring him to duck slightly even in the spacious alcove. His forearms gestured in complex patterns, a Xenarix tradition older than some civilizations.
Earth, my friend, is a home world of the humans, the apex species of the galaxy. 200 standard cycles ago,
Stroff continued, pacing the length of his alcove with quick steps, his tail adjusting its position with each movement to maintain his balance.
This council made a similar mistake. We were arrogant, then drunk on our collective power. 900 worlds under our protection. Technologies that could reshape matter at the subatomic level. Ships that could traverse the galaxy in weeks rather than centuries.
He paused at the window, placing 2 hands against the glass.
We discovered Earth and saw what you see now. A primitive world, barely space-capable, divided into compelling nations. Easy prey, we thought. A simple annexation to add to our collection.
The president's reflection in the glass showed his facial tentacles drooping with remembered shame.
We sent a full war fleet, 300 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels, 500,000 of our finest warriors. The humans met us at the edge of their star system with 42 ships.
A bitter laugh escaped him.
42. We thought it would be a massacre.
Stroff turned from the window, his lower arms clasping behind his back while the upper pair gestured dramatically.
It was a massacre, Soanil, but not the one we expected. Human ships moved like nothing we'd ever seen, accelerating at rates that should have liquefied their crews, their weapons.
He shuddered, his tail writhing.
They had developed something they called relativistic kill vehicles. Simple projectiles accelerated to near light speed. No shields could stop them. Our proud dreadnoughts were torn apart like paper.
The president began pacing again, his agitation evident.
But that was just the beginning. When we tried to establish footholds on their ocean worlds, they deployed AI-powered submarines. Machines that could operate at pressures that would crush most species, hunting in packs with a patience and cunning that seemed almost malevolent. These devices would lie dormant on the seafloor for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We lost entire invasion forces to enemies we never even saw. Surely,
Soanil interjected, finding his voice despite his growing horror.
Surely the councils combined might have... Could have what?
Stroff's voice cracked like a whip.
Overwhelmed them with numbers. We tried. For every human ship we destroyed, 3 more appeared. For every world we thought we'd secured, resistance movements armed with technologies we didn't understand made occupation impossible. And the whole world...
The president's purple skin darkened to almost black.
The Sol system is now the most heavily defended region in known space. The humans learned from our attack. They built weapons to fight enemies they hadn't even met. They prepare for wars against themselves as much as against others, perhaps more so. Their entire military doctrine seems built on the assumption that any possible threat, no matter how unlikely, must be countered with overwhelming force.
Stroff stopped pacing and faced Soanil directly.
Do you know how the war ended, young ambassador? Not with our victory, but with humanity's mercy. They could have pursued our broken fleets back to our home worlds. Instead, they offered terms. One condition: Earth and all human colonies were to be left alone. Forever. Any species that violated this agreement would not face just humanity's wrath, but the Council's as well. We agreed. What choice did we have?
Soanil felt his legs trembling. He wanted to sit, but couldn't bring himself to show such weakness.
But we are a Type 1 civilization now,
he said, grasping at the achievement that had brought him here.
We have harnessed the full energy output of our planet. Surely that means... It means nothing!
Stroff's tail lashed out, striking the wall of his alcove with a resounding crack.
Do you know where the classification system came from, Soanil? Do you know who created the very concept of measuring civilizations by their energy consumption?
The silence that followed was answer enough.
Humans,
Stroff said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow propagated throughout the chamber.
A human scientist named Kardashev proposed it in their pre-spaceflight era. They were classifying civilizations they hadn't even met yet, creating frameworks for deployment they could barely imagine. And you stand here, proud of achieving a milestone defined by a species you thought to conquer, not even knowing the origin of your own accomplishment. Their embarrassment is profound.
Soanil's nictitating membranes closed fully for a moment. A Zoari gesture of utter mortification. When they opened, his pink eyes had dimmed to a dull rose. The full weight of his species' ignorance, their dangerous arrogance, pressed down on him like the gravity of a neutron star. They had achieved Type 1 status and thought it made them giants. Instead, they were children, playing with tools they didn't understand, boasting of achievements defined by being so far beyond them that the comparison was meaningless. Soanil's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again.
I thank the Council for its wisdom and patience. I will return to Zoari Prime immediately and inform my government that...
He paused, searching for words that wouldn't completely shatter his people's newfound pride.
That we have much yet to learn before we can truly take our place among the galaxy's mature civilizations. See that you do.
Stroff said, his tone softer now, but no less firm.
And Soanil, make sure they understand. Earth is not to be touched. Not now. Not ever. Some sleeping giants are best left undisturbed.
Soanil bowed deeply to each alcove in turn, the formal gesture of acknowledgement and withdrawal. As he walked toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast space, he could feel the eyes of the elder species upon him. Some watched with pity, others with relief that catastrophe had been averted. None watched with respect he had hoped to earn today. The great doors closed behind him with a sound like the sealing of a tomb. So Anil stood in the antechamber, his reflection staring back at him from the polished floor. The proud ambassador who had entered was gone. In his place stood a chastened messenger, carrying news that would shake Saori Prime to its core. They were not ready for the adults' table.